What if I told you there was a family that started with less than nothing and ended up so powerful that the United States government called them for a bailout? Not a hedge fund, not a central bank. A family. At their peak, the Rothschilds controlled the largest private fortune in recorded human history. They bailed out the Bank of England. They financed the construction of the Suez Canal. They invented a scheme that modern regulators would call illegal. They set the price of gold for the entire world, every single morning, from a wood-paneled room in London. And they funded the creation of the diamond monopoly that convinced generations of Americans that a rock was worth 3 months of their salary. Every number you're about to hear is real. Every deal is documented. And some of what you're about to hear, most financial channels will never tell you. Stay with me. Frankfurt, Germany, 1744. A street called the Judengasse. Jews' Lane, 60 feet wide, a quarter-mile long. Gates locked from the outside at night. Jewish residents legally barred from owning land, practicing most professions, or leaving after dark. Into this street, on February 23, 1744, a boy named Mayer Amschel Bauer is born. His father trades currency on the margins. Small transactions, survival income. When Mayer is 12, both parents die of smallpox. He is sent to apprentice at a banking house in Hanover. He watches everything. He comes back to Frankfurt with one asset that costs nothing. He understands how money moves. He starts dealing rare coins. His targets, wealthy German princes who collect antiques. And here is where Mayer Rothschild does something that most history books skip over entirely. Because what he actually did, in modern terms, was illegal. His biggest client was Prince Wilhelm IX of Hesse-Kassel. Whenever Wilhelm wanted to buy gold coins, he asked Mayer to source them. And Mayer did. But not in the way Wilhelm understood. Mayer would first buy the coins himself using borrowed money. Then he'd sell them to Wilhelm at a markup. He was simultaneously the buyer and the seller, acting as both the agent and the counterparty. In today's markets, that's called front-running. It's a federal crime. Mayer did it openly, charged an 8% commission on top, and made a fortune doing it. By 1782, he had become the official investment manager for Prince Wilhelm's personal wealth. He changed the family name to Rothschild, after the red shield above his childhood door. Then he sent his 5 sons to 5 cities, Amschel in Frankfurt, Salomon in Vienna, Nathan in London, Kalman in Naples, James in Paris. 1 family, 1 network, 5 capitals. And they built a private courier system that was faster than any government postal service in Europe. Whoever gets the information first makes the trade first. Whoever makes the trade first makes the money. Of the 5 sons, Nathan was the weapon. He arrived in Manchester in 1798 with £20,000, approximately $3.5 million today, given to him by his father. He multiplied it several times over trading textiles, then moved to London and founded N.M. Rothschild and Sons, a firm that still operates today, more than 2 centuries later. By 1811, Nathan had landed the most valuable government contract in Europe. He became the primary logistics operator for moving British gold to Wellington's armies fighting Napoleon across the continent. Physical gold, thousands of pounds sterling worth, transported across war zones. The fees alone were enormous. But the real value was what the contract gave him: complete visibility into British government finances during wartime. He knew every number, every reserve, every vulnerability. By the spring of 1815, the combined assets of all 5 Rothschild brothers were approximately £500,000, roughly $90 million today. Solid. But what happened next was in a different category entirely. June 18, 1815, Waterloo, Belgium. Napoleon versus Wellington. Every trader in London was paralyzed. If Napoleon won, British government bonds, consols, would collapse. If Wellington won, they would surge. Nobody knew which way to bet. Nathan had positioned agents at the battlefield itself. When Wellington's forces defeated Napoleon that afternoon, a Rothschild courier rode immediately to the Belgian coast, crossed the Channel overnight, and reached Nathan in London on the morning of June 19th, a full day before the British government's official dispatches arrived. Nathan walked onto the floor of the London Stock Exchange, and he started selling consols, calmly, without expression, which made it worse, because traders knew Nathan Rothschild didn't panic without reason. The logic spread instantly. If the Rothschilds are selling, Napoleon must have won. The market collapsed. Everyone rushed for the exits, and Nathan's agents, positioned quietly across the floor, bought every bond they could reach at the bottom. When official confirmation arrived the next day, Wellington had won. Consols exploded upward. The exact profit is still debated. What is confirmed, the brothers' combined wealth, sitting at £500,000 in spring of 1815, had more than doubled by the following year. Some historians estimate Nathan made the equivalent of over $1 billion in modern terms in those 2 days. One trade, one family. And Europe now knew exactly who was running the financial world. Here is the part of this story that almost no one covers. While Nathan was trading consols in London, he was simultaneously doing something else. Something that made the Waterloo Trade look small. Britain needed to physically move £1.2 million worth of gold, roughly $215 million today, to fund Wellington's campaign across Europe. The British government had no mechanism to do it safely and quickly across war-torn borders. Nathan created one. He used his brother's network across 5 capitals to convert British gold into local currencies, forward it through the network, and deliver usable funds to Wellington's armies wherever they were operating. He was not just a trader. He was running a private cross-border financial infrastructure, at a time when no such thing existed anywhere else on Earth. The commission on that operation alone was £1 million. After Waterloo, the money flow didn't stop. It accelerated. The Rothschilds became the primary underwriters of European sovereign debt. Not for one country, for all of them. Between the 1850s and 1890s alone, N.M. Rothschild in London participated in issuing more than £1 billion in sovereign bonds. In today's terms, that is over $140 billion in bond issuance, from a single private family bank. Austria, Prussia, Russia, France, Brazil, Chile, the United States. The Brazilian relationship alone ran for over a century. Between 1852 and 1914, the bank issued loans to Brazil totaling £142 million. After World War I, even as the relationship became less exclusive, the family was still involved in Brazilian government loans totaling an additional £45.5 million between 1918 and 1939. And in 1829, Nathan did something that had never been done before in the history of sovereign finance. When Brazil's debts were threatening to overwhelm the country, Nathan structured a new loan of £400,000, specifically designed to pay the interest on Brazil's existing debts. A loan to service a loan. Historians believe this was the first debt refinancing instrument of its kind in history. Today, governments call it a debt rollover. Banks charge billions in fees to arrange them. Nathan Rothschild invented it. Then came the deal that best captures what the family had become: London. The Egyptian Khedive, broke, drowning in debt, needed to sell his shares in the Suez Canal Company. His stake, 44% of the most strategically important waterway on Earth, connecting Britain to India and the entire Eastern Empire. France was ready to buy. The asking price, £4 million, roughly $600 million today. Prime Minister Benjamin Disraeli needed it, immediately. Parliament wasn't in session. Government funds weren't available. The normal process would take months. He sent a messenger to Lionel de Rothschild at New Court, the family's London headquarters. One question: could the family provide £4 million by tomorrow? Lionel asked what the security was. The answer: the British government. Lionel's response: you shall have it. £4 million. The next morning, Britain got the Suez Canal. The interest income the Rothschilds collected on that loan, and the geopolitical access it created, was worth multiples of the principal for decades. Now here is something almost no other financial channel has ever covered properly. The diamonds in your engagement ring, the ones that supposedly mean forever, the ones that cost 3 months of salary. That entire market was built on Rothschild money. In 1869, a massive diamond rush erupted in South Africa. A young British entrepreneur named Cecil Rhodes showed up with almost nothing and started buying claims. He needed capital, serious capital, to consolidate the mines and build a monopoly. He went to N.M. Rothschild and Sons in London. The Rothschilds financed Rhodes, and with that backing, Rhodes was able to acquire competitors, freeze out rivals, and in 1888 founded De Beers Consolidated Mines, which went on to control 90% of the world's diamond supply. Think about that number. 90% of the entire global diamond supply, controlled by one company, funded at its foundation by one bank. De Beers maintained that 90% market stranglehold until the 1980s. The famous marketing line, "A diamond is forever," came decades later from an ad agency in 1947. But the monopoly that made diamonds artificially scarce, and therefore expensive, was engineered in a boardroom in London with Rothschild capital in 1888. Every time someone buys a diamond engagement ring, they are, very distantly, participating in the legacy of that original loan. But perhaps the most extraordinary and least discussed chapter of Rothschild financial power involves the United States. January 1895. Washington, D.C. The U.S. economy is in free fall. The panic of 1893 has left millions unemployed. And now, something worse. The U.S. Treasury is running out of gold. The statutory minimum gold reserve was $100 million. By January 24, 1895, it had fallen to $68 million. 1 week later, $45 million. The Treasury Secretary quietly told President Grover Cleveland something terrifying. The actual usable reserve was $9 million, and one single investor held a Treasury draft for $10 million. The United States government was, literally, hours away from defaulting. Cleveland tried to sell bonds publicly. It failed. Congress wouldn't cooperate. There was no Federal Reserve. It wouldn't be created for another 18 years. There was no IMF. There was no mechanism. There was only one option. J.P. Morgan took a private train to Washington and walked into the White House unannounced. He told Cleveland he had a plan. But the plan required a partner in London. That partner was the Rothschild Bank. Using an obscure Civil War-era statute, Morgan and the Rothschilds structured a private bailout of the United States Treasury. The terms, the U.S. government would receive 3.5 million ounces of gold. Half would be shipped from the Rothschild Bank in London, half from domestic sources Morgan controlled. In exchange, the syndicate received $62.3 million in 30-year government bonds, paying 4% annually. The gold was priced at $17.80 per ounce when the actual market price was $18.60, meaning the U.S. paid a $3 million premium. But the deal worked. The gold arrived. The drain stopped. The United States avoided sovereign default. The most powerful government on earth, bailed out by a private banker and a London family that had started in a locked ghetto 150 years earlier. Morgan's bank was eventually bailed out by the U.S. government during the 2008 financial crisis. The symmetry of that fact is almost too perfect to be real. Now the detail that almost nobody knows about the Rothschilds and gold. Starting in 1919, just after World War I, the global gold market needed a benchmark, a daily price that miners, central banks, jewelers, and governments could all use as a reference. So they created the London Gold Fix. 5 major bullion dealers would meet each morning to set the price, and the meeting happened in one specific location, a wood-paneled room inside the N.M. Rothschild and Sons offices on St. Swithin's Lane in London. Each dealer sat at the table. Each had a small Union Jack flag in front of them. When they wanted to adjust their buy or sell orders, they raised the flag. The price moved up or down until buy and sell amounts were within 50 bars of gold. That was the fix. And that price became the benchmark for the entire global gold market. Every mine on Earth, every central bank, every jewelry manufacturer, every gold futures contract, all priced off a number set in a room owned by the Rothschilds. This process ran from that same room for 85 years. It wasn't until 2004, when N.M. Rothschild sold its place on the gold fixing panel and exited the precious metals business entirely, that the daily ritual moved to a telephone conference call. In 2014, researchers at NYU's Stern School of Business published a study examining unusual trading patterns around the 3 p.m. London gold fix over a 10-year period. Their conclusion: the data was consistent with price artificiality and suggested coordination between participants. The Rothschilds had already left the room by then. But for 85 years, the family that started in a Frankfurt coin shop was, in a very literal sense, setting the price of gold for the entire world. And then the 20th century tried to erase them. When Hitler came to power in 1933, the Rothschild Bank in Frankfurt, the oldest branch, the one Mayer himself had founded, was forced to close immediately. In 1938, after the Nazi annexation of Austria, the Gestapo arrested Baron Louis von Rothschild at Vienna's airport. He was held for over a year. His freedom was purchased in cash. The Nazis demanded the equivalent of $21 million, reported at the time as the largest ransom payment for any individual in recorded history. Louis paid it, signed over his Austrian industrial holdings, including a major steelworks, and was released. The family's Vienna branch, bank, palaces, art collections, real estate, was seized entirely. Adolf Eichmann set up his operational headquarters inside the confiscated Palais Rothschild in Vienna, using it to organize the deportation of Austrian Jews. The Naples branch had already closed in 1863 due to lack of male heirs. The Frankfurt branch, the original, closed in 1901, also without heirs to continue it. With Nazism, the Vienna branch was obliterated by force. The family members who escaped sold their Austrian bank assets at a fraction of real value just to get out. What remained was France and London, and then France nationalized them. In 1981, Socialist President François Mitterrand nationalized the Bank Rothschild in Paris. The family received compensation at a valuation the family considered far below market. A banking dynasty that had operated in France since 1812 was absorbed by the state in a single legislative vote. The family rebuilt, relaunched in France under a new name, rebuilt the business from scratch, because that is what the Rothschilds do. Today, Rothschild & Company operates across 40 countries with over 3,500 employees. In 2006 alone, the firm advised on mergers and acquisitions totaling $104.9 billion, ranking second in the UK M&A market, generating £83.2 million in pre-tax profit on assets of £5.5 billion. Jacob Rothschild, who died in February 2024, left an estate valued at approximately £400 million, roughly $500 million. Benjamin de Rothschild, who died in 2021, was worth $1.6 billion at his death. The wealthiest individual Rothschild living today is estimated at approximately $10 billion. The combined family wealth across all branches is estimated between $400 billion and $500 billion. Some extreme estimates, which most serious analysts reject, place attributed holdings above $1 trillion. No longer a private superpower, but still the Rothschilds. Here is what you should actually take away from this story, beyond the money. Mayer Amschel Rothschild was born in a cage, a legal cage with locked gates that the government of Frankfurt built specifically to contain people like him. He was not supposed to accumulate wealth. He was not supposed to leave. He was certainly not supposed to build something that 200 years later would still be shaping the global financial system. He used information faster than his competitors. He used access where others saw barriers. He invented financial instruments that the entire world now takes for granted. He built a network across 5 countries that functioned as a single organism at a time when communication traveled at the speed of a horse. His family financed the British Empire's wars, bailed out the Bank of England, invented sovereign debt refinancing, funded the diamond monopoly, set the price of gold for 85 years, and when the most powerful government on earth needed a bailout, it called them. The red shield is still the family symbol, from a locked alley in Frankfurt to the boardrooms of every capital on earth. That is the Rothschilds.